Good.
Hello, Suhas. First of all, thanks so much for joining us in this discussion today. And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, sure. So for talking to us about yourself, your background, your agenda, what you stand for, our viewers and our community members, I'm sure will be very, very keen to learn from you today.
Wonderful.
Um, so you are running for the Virginia House of Delegates from the 87th district. 87th district, actually a lot of the Indian Americans and Bengali Americans actually reside in the 87th district. 87th district we consider pivotal for a lot of reasons. And also the 87th district has been a closely contested election. We have been watching the 87th district quite closely. Elections have been won by as little as 51 votes. So all in all, a very important district for a lot of us and our friends and family, which would be watching you closely on this one. You want to add something to that?
Yeah, no, the 87th District, Sterling, Ashford, South Riding, Aldie, Brambleton, all the way down to Prince William County too. And it's important because it's actually the largest district in Virginia, and by population, about 100,000 people, because of so many people moving into the district over the past 5 years. And it also encompasses Dulles Airport, and so there's a lot of very important policies. One of the issues that I'm seeing is that because it's grown so fast, the state formulas for transportation, for education, aren't accounting for the growth. And so, one of the things we need is a voice in Richmond to be able to get some of those dollars that the 87th District people send to Richmond back over here to Loudoun County, Fairfax County, Prince William County.
All right, and we are obviously really glad that you are running. So before we jump to some of the main agenda questions, one question I like to ask the candidates is sort of rewind the clock a little bit and take you back in time when you were, maybe early life, midlife, when you had maybe some challenges, some inspirations. How did you draw from those, which perhaps shaped you better and put you in a better position to run for office? Anything from your early life or past life?
I've faced lots of challenges in my life, but what made me get into politics in particular and really policy making was I was living in New Orleans and going to school there when Hurricane Katrina hit the city. And so, there obviously, there was, belongings that were damaged, things like that, but it wasn't really nearly effective or costly for me personally as it was for my neighbors and for people in the city. And when I came back to the city, I decided I wanted to help be part of the solution. And so I was building houses in the community. I was gutting and rebuilding houses. I was part of the environmental groups that were trying to rebuild in a green way. And then, one of the things we found was that the city council was very difficult to work with. They weren't fully committed to some of the rebuilding that needed to be done. We found out later many of them were corrupt. They were taking money under the table from developers, and so I felt, a lot of times when people see that, they decide to, politics is not for them. They're just not going to be involved with it. But I think maybe it's the inspiration from my parents, and my family that's always been a part. We always wanted to be part of the solution. So I wanted to be part of the solution. And so that led to working on a campaign, it led to working on Capitol Hill, led to working in the White House under President Obama. A lot of great experiences, but all of it started in New Orleans when I felt like there was a lot of loss and that the people who were supposed to be helping fix the problem were not there for the people.
Right, and that got you sort of better prepared. All that learning process helped you to now go to the next level and run for this office. So that's very good. And also to be noted, you're a son of an immigrant like a lot of us. Any special challenge there or anything you want to say about that?
Well, my family actually immigrated. Their port of entry was Dulles Airport. That was their Ellis Island, and so it was just part of the district. And my mother always said that it was difficult, trying to fit in as an immigrant at the time. But Virginia has a huge Asian American population, just an incredible population of people of color that has really contributed to the success of Virginia. A lot of the great companies that we've built in Northern Virginia in particular, a lot of the great things, a lot of the community groups, that they have contributed to the success of this community, and people have seen it. But it's never had representation in Virginia. We've never elected an Asian, South Asian in particular, in the state or federal level in the history of Virginia.
Right.
400 years. We've never elected a South Asian. So I would be the first, and I think the community deserves that representation. It deserves to be a part of have a seat at the table. And It's not to say that it hasn't had great representatives already,
Right.
but rather I think it's good to, if people feel like they have representation that comes from the same background they come from, that's live the same experiences they've lived too. I think that's important too.
Right. So the representation should be representative of the demographics to some extent, at least. So currently there is a disconnect. So if you win, you're not going to just be the first Indian American in the Virginia Legislative Assembly, but the first Asian American as well.
South Asian. Yes.
South Asian. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We have Mark Keem, who is East Asian, and then we have Kathy Tran, who's Southeast Asian. But
Right.
we've never had someone Indian, Pakistani, Bengali, Nepalese, never from that region of the world.
Okay, okay, yeah, very interesting. Now, probably coming more to the mainstream questions. Often in terms of campaigning, we talk about three key points because a lot of people have a lot of things going through their minds. But three key points, both from the perspective of the campaign, from the perspective of the candidate, and also from the perspective of the constituents, what's running through their minds. And if you ask different people, they'll have different opinion about what those key points would be. So if I ask you about the three key points that you would like to focus on, or you might see that it needs change or the system is broken, what would be three key points that you would focus on your campaign?
Yeah, I think right now I've got one key point, and that's our political system isn't working very well for us. So there's a lot of partisanship, there's a lot of fighting that's happening, a lot of polarization.
Yeah.
I believe that one of the big reasons why that exists is because the legislators draw their own districts. They draw districts for themselves, they empower themselves, and they never have to be accountable to their constituents as a result. So, we have legislators who have never had a competitive election until very recently. It's only because of the movement in Virginia that so many people literally moving to different parts of the state, and that's the only reason why the seats have changed hands at all. But I really feel like we have to have fair redistricting. We have to put an end to the money in politics, at least control it in some way, because it's getting outlandishly expensive now, the average person cannot run for the General Assembly. It's just the case. I'm lucky enough to be able to be a lawyer who can work from home and remotely.
Right.
But the average person cannot go to the General Assembly for 2.5 months out of the year, get paid $17,000 a year, and then try to serve. It's almost impossible for a lot of people. And so it's supposed to be a citizen legislature that responds to the people, that gives the people a voice. And right now, it's just giving the people who are in power a voice, and unfortunately. So I think that there are some democratic reforms. Making it easier to vote is another one. There are some democratic reforms we need, and then we need to get back to problem solving. So think about the traffic in Northern Virginia, for instance. There's when the federal level doesn't fund our roads become dilapidated, and new roads can't be built. So if the federal level can't pay for it, then it gets to the states, right? There's a lot of gridlock right now at the federal level, so the state level, we have to pick up the slack. If the state level doesn't bring that money to Loudoun County, then the Board of Supervisors has to. Same with Fairfax County, Prince William County. We're not funding basic infrastructure, which is the core tenet of government and proof that it's not working for us right now. So I think infrastructure and then schools, we're not fully funding schools, and that is a travesty, because schools should be a top priority. We should not be worrying about whether to give one school money versus another school. Every school should get the money it needs, and the students should get the experience they need, the counseling they need to succeed. And we're just not, that just shows me that government's not fulfilling its top priorities like infrastructure, and it's not prioritizing things correctly, like not fully funding education.
Okay. You mentioned transportation, so let me ask you a follow-up question. So for a lot of the people who reside in these so-called bedroom communities in Ashburn and South Riding, it's a challenge to go to work every day, and that not only diminishes the quality of life at home, but the productivity at work, both combined. And do you feel that transportation solutions right now need not just focusing on building the infrastructure, but perhaps some smart solutions? I don't know what those could be. Maybe bike lanes, maybe encourage people to work from home, or other things, railways. I mean, where do you stand on that?
We should be developing more intelligently and more carefully than the way we've been developing right now. It's not to say that we shouldn't have any development,
right?
But just saying that, well, let's just coordinate all the lights and let's use smart city technology. I've heard that said before. It's not really a solution either. It's just the fact of the matter is we've built these huge bedroom communities, as you call it, but we haven't put the infrastructure in place before putting them in that was necessary. We underestimated the number of people who needed to use cars. We don't have any last mile solutions for transportation, so even if you take the metro out here, you still need to drive to the metro station, even if the metro station comes here. And so there's no bus system, like Alexandria has the Dash system, DC has a great bus system. There's nothing. So you have to have a car. And if you have to have a car, then everyone has to have a car, and then you're always going to have a lot of cars on the roads. And so I think that the roads have actually, I've had people visit who said, wow, you're like, Loudoun County Parkway is a huge road. It's like it would be a major highway in my town. But I tell them, well, but everyone has to have a car, and everyone has to get home, and everyone commutes to work because there's no office complexes, there's no businesses here. So the solution to transportation, you were getting at it, is bringing more businesses here, building more commercial here, making sure that there's better last mile solutions for transportation, and that they make a lot of sense, and then making sure we invest in mass transit, because that's going to bring less cars on the road.
Okay, I see. Now changing the topic a bit to your position in the White House as a technology advisor to the President Obama. That's a very unique qualification that I believe the other candidates does not have. What were your major responsibilities while serving in that position? And also, when you talk about technology advisor, does it cover mostly information and software technology, or does it span across other technologies as well?
Sure. I mean, your last point there, technology is everything now. And basically, the president first had a chief technology officer early in their administration, and President Obama said, okay, what I want is a task force that's chaired by that chief technology officer, and run by someone who has experience as a lawyer in every branch of government, like myself. And basically, he wanted me to get some of the hardest things in technology done. You would think that all the president has to do is call an agency and say, I want to get this done, but it's not as easy as that. Getting people, especially at agencies, to move is an incredibly difficult task. And then being able to work with other countries and get them on board with international initiatives are incredibly important. So my job was basically get things done. So basically, I was giving a list of a wish list, per se, by the president and the chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, and they asked me to get as much of it done as possible. So cybersecurity, we were able to get a huge budget passed as the last budget in the Obama administration to retire legacy systems. So that was more like an IT software thing. And then there were things that like being able to expand broadband access in the US and all over the world that were, the problems there were not technology problems, they were people problems, and getting governments to actually invest in broadband access. And so that was more, say more soft skills and being able to move people politically in international channels.
And I'm sure you'll be able to bring some of that learning process into the 87th district once you're elected, and implement some of those ideas as well, right?
In the world, I want Virginia to be the leader on technology issues and on basically empowering people without a voice. And so Virginia can lead the way, other states will follow, other countries will follow us. So this is only the beginning, but we want to make sure that the quality of life for every Virginian is great. The Science and Technology Committee in Virginia right now is a punishment. The Speaker of the House sends members who mean to him or who he doesn't like to the Science and Technology Committee, and then he never sends any bills there. So that's the legislature we currently have. That's the General Assembly we currently have. I think we can change that.
Okay. A lot of people in our community actually view you as a breath of fresh air, and that's for more than one reason. So first of all, you are perhaps from another generation. You are very tech savvy. You served under President Obama. How would you use some of the emerging technologies that could be cloud computing, artificial intelligence, smart cities? We talked a little bit about that, but how would you bring technology based on your technology background to improve things in our district, and also the way they do business at the Legislative Assembly in Richmond? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's never a technology problem, it's always a people problem. That's what I found in every step of my experience, is that yes, we have the technology for you to be able to renew your driver's license, get a new driver's license without having to go to the DMV. But just because we have the technology doesn't mean that it exists. I want to put an end to the process of having to print out a PDF and sign it and notarize it and send it back.
Yeah.
We have the technology to be able to just sign things online at your computer. We have the technology to get make processes easier for small businesses. But you have to actually have someone pushing on that front. You have to have someone to put chief technology officers, for instance, at every agency, or someone who is in charge of technology at every agency that can report directly to the top. That you cannot have your CTO buried in an org chart. You have to have them at the top, and so it's generally a people problem. It's never a technology problem. We could have the best, most efficient government. It'd be like a big tech company almost if we really wanted to, but we'd have to have the political willpower to do it and the people willing to do it.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's yes. So we note that because the common factor is often the people, and you have to make changes at the people level, remove bureaucracy and that kind of thing. So I think your fresh perspective might be very useful here. But certainly, thanks for answering that question. We understand how it's not always it's a combination of you have to come to the people level to be able to implement the technology to make it work. Different topic, taxation. So a lot of us feel that tax rates have gone up at the rate which is higher than what the income rates have been. And some of us in this community, some of us at least, are afraid that we may be what we call taxed out of our homes. How do you view the current taxation system and the taxation rate and tax policies, and what would you like to change, if any?
I would like people to understand that when you look at your tax rate, also look at the value you're getting in return for your taxes. So, for instance, your property taxes, if you live in Loudoun County, are about around $1, let's say, but 15 million of that was spent subsidizing a gun range in Western Loudoun, and rather than on schools, for instance. So, I would, let's take another example, healthcare, for instance. People are concerned about the idea of taxes being raised for healthcare costs, right. But then they spend $10,000, $20,000 a year on healthcare costs out of pocket if certain things happen, right? Yeah. For their family, even their premiums are incredibly high. Right. If I told you, well, you spend $18,000 a year in taxes right now, but you spend $25,000 a year on healthcare costs. Wouldn't you rather spend $18,000 to get better value for your taxes and pull your money together and get? What I liked, it's the politics of it is that let's lower taxes by a penny, and then let's say that we just lower taxes, and let's get some credit for it. Get credit for it, and let's put up signs in our re-elections saying that we should lower taxes. Yeah. That's what's happening right now, and it's not working very well. That's why you have crumbling infrastructure. That's why you spend an hour and a half in traffic each way. Is because we don't have the actual funding to cover some of these costs. So the first thing is prioritization of how your tax dollars are spent. Yeah. That's the first thing, and getting the most value of it. You can use technology. You can use whatever methods that the private sector uses to get that efficiency. That's priority one. Priority two is just getting that value back in return. Right. It makes more sense if you add $10 each person, but you're able to let's say buy back a toll road in response, and then you don't have to pay $10 each way. That makes a lot more sense. And I know a lot of people have said they would do that. So yes, it's easier to think about it in terms of, well, my taxes are high, like I'm not getting and then I don't know what I'm getting in return. And I think that's another thing, is maybe we should be more transparent about where our taxes are being spent, send people a report on how their taxes are being spent, and that way they know what value they're getting in return. Okay. Yeah, I think we get Suhas's point that even when we go to a store or order something from the internet, we are always comparing prices, making sure we are getting the value added, the value for the money. Mm-hmm. And what you're saying is for taxes, which is we are already paying a hefty amount, we are not always scrutinizing or being aware how much value we are getting in return, and you want to fix some of that. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Next important topic, and we touched upon it a little bit, transportation. I'm going to ask a very specific question. We have the Dulles Greenway, and we have been following that for a long time.
your predecessors, the previous delegates, they also tried hard. But we know there have been court rulings, there have been complaints, there have been appeals. But the high rates looks like here to stay. Do you have anything in your agenda that you're going to do differently that would help with the tolls or reducing the tolls in Dulles Greenway?
So you just asked a question about taxes. It's a great example of why, so that General Assembly didn't want to raise revenue in order to build that road itself, and so they had a private company come in and build it.
Yeah.
And now our kids' might end up paying tolls on that. We would have saved a lot of money by being able to build that road on our own without a private company building it. So that's a great example. But to answer your question, what are we going to do differently? Everything's been tried already. So. The only thing that hasn't been tried as much is trying to build more alternatives to the toll road. So, for instance, I know a lot of residents in Ashburn who, want to be able to get onto 28 without having to take the toll road, but it doesn't make a lot of sense right now. It'd be nice if there was an alternative to the Greenway in order to do that. And same with 66, the tolling on there. It'd be nice if, we had some alternatives to it. But, the Dulles Greenway in particular, that is a private company in Australia. All our tolls are going to them.
Yes.
That is
Trip, they're called, I believe.
Yeah, it's that is not the way we should be doing infrastructure. I've heard a lot of grumblings about $1 trillion infrastructure plan coming out of the White House. But if you look at what the plan actually is, it's to do more private toll roads, and then our kids will be paying tolls on that road, $15 a leg even, and so we have to stop. We have to stop this model. We have to fund infrastructure ourselves, pave our own roads ourselves, instead of cordoning it off to the private sector.
I see. So what you're saying is there is no magic solution. This is the result of some perhaps bad decisions that were made earlier, but we can perhaps think about some parallel solutions, not necessarily reducing the tolls, but
there's a magic solution. Is eminent domain. You could kick them out, but then no one would want to do business in Virginia anymore.
Yeah.
There's other magic solutions like trying to buy back the toll road, but if we're not willing to pay for it, so that'd probably be $1 billion maybe. But that's a magic solution, right? It's just
not
it's expensive.
Right.
It's an expensive solution, but if someone put a bill on my desk that would get rid of the toll road and make it a public road, I would support it. I'd have to see how it would affect revenues, but I'd support any idea. I've heard ideas of taxing, of privatizing the rest stops in Virginia to try to buy back the toll road, at least partially. I'd support that. I'd support any creative solution. I'd support suing them because I think that their rates are too high right now. I support anything on the table, but the fact is that we're stuck. That's why you've seen a lot of people try and fail. Why are we stuck? Let's go back to why we're stuck, and let's remember it and not make the same mistakes.
Same mistake again. Yeah, and this is especially what Suhas said is relevant to the residents in Ashburn, South Riding, and some of them actually avoid the toll roads even though it helps them out. Now we are slowly towards wrapping up the interview, so I'd like to actually ask you a question about, do you have any message for voter registration and early voting that you'd like our constituents to know?
Absolutely. If you live in Loudoun County, Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m., up until the Saturday before Election Day, you can vote. The Saturday before Election Day, which I believe is November 2nd, you can actually vote all day at the Dulles Recreation Center in South Riding. You can also vote at the Cascade Senior Center if you live in Sterling. But either way, come out and vote. Your vote is going to matter a lot. We expect record turnout. Your neighbors are going to be voting, but you need to add your voice because it matters a lot. This election, we're going to be doing redistricting next year. This election will affect congressional districts. It'll affect state legislative districts for the next decade because we're going to be in charge. The General Assembly is going to be in charge of how we redistrict, how we draw the lines. And think about the things we talked about today: traffic, schools. We didn't talk much about gun safety. That's another issue where we can do something about it right now, but you need to have your voice involved. And then the last thing I'll say is after you vote on November 5th, your job isn't over. We want you to be engaged in the process. We want you paying attention. The reason why a committee like the Science and Technology Committee has been devalued is because people weren't paying attention. But people need to know what's going on in Richmond. They need to know what's going on. And I see it as my job to help you stay informed. And so I put my cell phone number on the back of everything I pass out. I send out, I have email lists, and I send out to as many people as possible. But sign up for my email list, for Virginia.com, SUHASFOR Virginia.com. Just sign up and stay informed if I'm lucky enough to be elected and represent you.
Yeah, and since you're right in mentioning we did not cover the important topic of gun control. So let me ask you a question there. Some of us are engaged with Moms Demand Action and also Everytown for America.
Sure.
And we go to their meetings, we discuss, and they're also engaged with the basically the elected officials as well. They go to Richmond. They do a lot of meeting with officials. When you're elected, would you like to continue your interaction with those groups, and with perhaps the help of some of these groups, you'd be able to change some of the common sense state legislations on gun control?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be much movement at the national level on really a lot of issues. You have a Democratic House of Representatives, a Republican Senate, and then you have a Republican president right now at the national level. So you're not going to see a lot of movement, and so it's up to the states to really put forth policies that make sense. And I think that it's common sense to make sure that everyone who purchases a firearm uses that responsibly, that there's a background check, there's a waiting period. A lot of states that have done that have seen success. They've seen crime rates lowered, they've seen gun violence lowered, red flag laws that ensure that people who are in danger to others or themselves. Suicide is one of the top, most of the victims of gun violence are actually suicides. If we're able to get people the help they need, rather than allow them to get a gun very easily, I think that would be very effective. So where I disagree with my Republican colleagues is they don't believe it's a serious issue. Every time I talk to my Republican colleagues, they just talk about the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment for the last 100 years has not been interpreted as not allowing states to put common sense solutions onto the table. It's not the violation of your Second Amendment right to have to at least be using that firearm responsibly. So I think that if you're a danger to other people, that's not what the Second Amendment set forth.
So basically the Second Amendment and some of these laws, common sense laws that protect our community, can coexist at the same time.
Absolutely.
Right? So my last question would be an open question. I tried to cover a few topics, but there may be topics that are in your mind important that we did not cover. Anything that you'd like to say in general to our viewers?
Oh, just what I was saying before. Please stay engaged. Please stay active. Come join our campaign if you're interested. Again, SuhasForVirginia.com. We are right here in 6 Pigeon Hill in Sterling, so please stop by anytime in our office and just say hi. I'm here most of the time. And then, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm very easy to reach out to. My phone number is 571-707-4566. Feel free to call me anytime if you have any opinions or any thoughts. But I want to keep hearing from people. The biggest tragedy in any democracy is when people aren't engaged. Because when people aren't engaged, then it's only the very few who get to control the political process, who get to control the policy, and that ends up not being sustainable in the long run. So please stay engaged. Please come out and vote. And then if you like what you heard, please come out and be involved.
Thanks a lot for this discussion and for
much.
your message, which is going to help our viewers decide on November 5th. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you.